Vitaly friends. I am Vitaly Portnikov. The Secretary of Defense firm the United States Pete Hegseth has loaded Russia with a new serious approach. On the side of the received states of their allies, I still blame Ukraine will not end in the best hour. I became a wingman journalist of the New York Times, the Pentagon Tomahawk missiles for the faithful transfer to Ukraine at once, and the order issued by the President of the United States Donald Trump. The harsh rhetoric of the American temple minister, and the obvious mirror of the adoration of the American president, of how it was possible to enter the war at a close outcome before the end of the conflict of Russia's guilt against Ukraine. And about the situation, Russian President Putin, ignoring, be it the bookmarks of an American colleague to the real world, and on the Russian-Ukrainian front, Trump is helping us to pass the board on Russia in the same way as he looked at Hamas a long time ago. However, it is obvious that for the Taisku to the Kremlin, plums alone cannot be obtained. So far, Trump himself, having removed the escalation, draining, and respectfully Tilka pogroms on the dates of Ukraine Tomahawk, at the time of implementation and night logistical and difficulties. Putin to conceive about the real process from Ukraine even before the end of hostilities. About what is needed, the view of draining to specific references, and the Minister of War from the received states Pete Hegseth, laying allies, draining up to the certificates and spillships bought American dumping for Ukraine. Moreover, I am to the Trump administration on not conceiving about new packages not in Ukraine, until the side of the most received states. So I am in the hours of President Joseph Biden. And those resources can be spent forever on purchasing American dumping of European Ukraine, obviously, not to get in order for Moscow to seriously continue fighting the greatest hands. It is known that the situation can change at times. Donald Trump really grabbed the decision of the Yakis at the post-American dump. Missiles, so I went to Tomahawk and let Ukraine use these missiles to strike at the sovereign territory of the Russian Federation, for strategic temple and energy facilities of Russia. To the point that you still respect the decision of Donald Trump, even in Ukraine, such a thing is allowed to be famous. And the views of European allies in the state, received in the state. And then Ukraine symbolically sprats from rockets, and I will not understand, supposedly she will be able to launch them. European Ukraine. Maybe on the dates of the missile, Ukraine has a significant keel and logistical problems. The Yaki is soundly tied from the Tomahawk. And then, indeed, in those situations, guilt can develop into realistic marriages. The President of Russia disbeatings from the fact that Ukraine's reset will change the situation at the front and in the rear. Hitting the Ukrainian infrastructure and carrying out realistic attacks in the fire on the Russian-Ukrainian front. In those situations, the Russian-Ukrainian blame is the share of a closely contested conflict. Putin for an hour of Donald Trump's stay in the White House before a new round of Russian-Ukrainian guilt. I have already printed out 2029 lesson for the new American administration. Putin is not beating up a new president with a job in the state. Unbeknownst to the new president, you are developing the political processes you have received in the state, and with such shyness. The offensive of Donald Trump can be both unhinged and chaotic. Neither the ranks of the president with received in the state. There may be a development in the military situation at the Straku. Putin will demonstrate more missiles and strikes on the sovereign territory of the Russian Federation, will not accept his own bodies. And Shlyak away from the escalation of Russian-Ukrainian guilt and the scale of the conflict on the territory of Ukraine. And in that situation, the hybrid guilt is allegedly already overgrown with the ambush of the Russian Federation of Ukraine, and a member of NATO from the appearance and army of drones in the windward simple of Ukraine of Europe. And you have been so Russian for a long time, and just tell Estonia in a windy way. You can pass in the Russian temple of summer in the windward stretch of NATO military facilities. With the point of view of the Russian Federation is to help Ukraine in the first rounds of the Russian-Ukrainian confrontation. And such a rank on the right can go up to a direct one between Russia and Ukraine and a NATO member. Moreover, in such situations, with the staff received on the Cheli and with Donald Trump, it is unlikely that in Europe, the most American objects can become the head of the Russian president. This rank will respect the American far away and to Ukraine, and handing over to the European right. We do not know what kind of developments the situation is today. The chances of de-escalation are equally high against the coming months, as are the chances of a rich escalation of the conflict. From its transition to the third holy guilt, to and with the exchange of nuclear strikes between the two nuclear ones over the extinction. And we do not forget that for Putin and his mosquitoes, nuclear discharges have long been dumped and streaming. She pretended to be a blackmail reference dump, not yet turning off. And at a critical, from the point of view of the Russian moment of confrontation with Ukraine. The glues of the Russian Federation is still the readiness of the people. And unless Ukraine is really willing to drop a nuclear strike on American facilities in Europe and the broad Russian-Ukrainian fault. On the topic of the channel, subscribe to it, subscribe to my social on the channel. Patreon helps to develop these resources. The sponsorship function itself.